Going live. We're recording.
Good afternoon. Calling this special meeting of the Woodcreek City Council to order February 23rd, 2022 at 2 o'clock. And ask everyone to rise for a moment of silence.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Call roll.
Here.
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 Councilmember President. Councilmember Brook.
Here.
Councilmember Hines.
Here.
Councilmember King.
Here. We have a quorum. No public comments in person. We had one sent in that I'll read at this time. Dear Acting City Secretary Lewis, please accept our public comments concerning the agenda items posted for the rest of this meeting. We request the comments read at the beginning of the regular agenda. Item number 1, zoning overlay proposal. We are concerned about the proposed zoning application and oppose the proposed ordinance due to lack of vital research and input from professionals. P&Z commissioners are to be commended for the attention to seeking much needed information. We have submitted our suggestions to P&Z commissioner for consideration and offer these to the city council. Number 1, seek information verifying specific properties subject to the proposal. Number 2, seek and obtain written verification of understanding waivers of liability from those owners who give up their property rights to protect the city from legal disputes. Number 3, seek a real estate professional, a city planner, or other consultant to review and report on viability of this proposal. Number 4, seek an outside attorney to provide an official written legal opinion addressing the proposal, including legal case authority and analysis of city legal exposure. Number 5, seek and provide financial impact. No information of budgetary allowances nor projected costs has been provided. We object against stress. Additionally to this proposal, because it seeks to limit property rights, risks legal challenges, and wrongly offers preferential treatment to a segment of our city. It further asserts an unfounded threat of urbanization in direct conflict with prior vision plans of our city. We stand united to offer our views and contribute to citizen communications and education. Thank you for your consideration. Respectfully, Mayor Gloria Whitehead, Mayor Bill Shield, Mayor Harris. And just a quick point of fact about standing united to offer their views. We have reached out to the mayors and asked them to sit down at the table and discuss these things. And so far they're scheduled to do these deals. Moving on to the regular agenda, we are going to take your indulgence and go first to executive session with our attorney as allowed in here. This would be pursuant to chapter 551.071, the executive session for the purpose of consultation with legal counsel regarding the city of Woodcreek franchise agreement with Texas. And our attorney is here. We need to sit down with her real quickly, and we'll be back, and we'll go straight to the number one item on the agenda, and hear from the P&Z chair, Dr. Hart. Thank you. We'll go into executive session.
I just don't like being on TV. You think he made a terrible mistake?
Well,
What did he say? That's pretty
No, but I did not. Yeah, I want to go to the station today. She was longer
are you Joe?
Yes, ma'am.
I think I don't think we've had a chance to meet. Other than Brook Meadow.
Okay, how are you?
Well, thank you.
That's great. So far, so good. Trying to stay warm. Yesterday.
Yeah, well, and yesterday I was complaining because I was out working in the yard. Warm. Go in, and I thought, well, yeah. It's good to meet you.
There's my card right there.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Or are you hanging in there? I am.
The city secretary think y'all hire somebody.
Yeah, we have some good applicants. Well, that's the problem.
Have you interviewed anybody? No.
You asked about that. ACL. Yeah.
You're not very good at it, but like they're legalized.
Like,
What I can, he's asking, and he said, I really haven't come for one comment he didn't make. And if we operated in the military like this, we really get anything done. He did say that. He did say that. Of course, he's used to walking in a room, if the general is there, what they say goes, and if the general's not there, then what he says goes, so it's nothing like it.
We got to take
Yeah.
All right. That's just
If you sit on a bar,
Yeah.
you get so much more. Open these,
How much should
You know anybody?
How much should it touch?
You know, before he attended that.
I think it's like April.
All the-
Okay.
He really thought it did not apply to committees and.
It doesn't have to, but when you structure it like, see, you know, and one minute ago. Lord Ryder. So she had committed to report to her. And when you say report to her, you go report the truth, but you went off and did your own thing. And that's how we took that 4-page statement.
It seems very limiting to not be able to have an open, honest give and take without worrying
Well,
that what you say will be used against you.
well recorded.
Yeah.
With people pouring out the wood like roads. You're not out there, you're not at Woodland, I mean, Woodcreek Drive that day.
I don't know if it should be.
They had the three people. You know, recommended and working with council, we did it, working with council. No person like if this was built, this is gonna be the rent for the park. That sounds good.
Yeah, no,
But
everybody's having.
if we could have an open meeting, that street still would be like, You just gotta do it. You can't hide stuff. You need to come up with a hole. And they can grip, it's their responsibility to grip. That's their responsibility. But for them to sit through all this stuff, it's just, it can be so informed. We read, every morning, we call the house. You know, one thing, not much there. But there's a perception of some citizens that, oh, they're going to illegal stuff like that.
Well,
So much stuff, money in their pockets.
yeah.
There's times when problem solving ought to be done in a much lower.
Really good. So what can we do?
Oh.
I mean, maybe this is one of the reasons we don't have people volunteering, is they're afraid they're gonna get.
I was
I mean, when they're right. Well, you can be open without deciding.
Yeah.
It wasn't structured. These committees structured like this. It's so structured. You can't tell people, that's a part. And you know, you should have committee for here. You get the thing, you get 6 or 7 minutes, you don't agree to this. You don't agree to this. That's what you don't have to do. And solve things, it's really like to go back. I've been in church so many times on these things. And then, yes.
Well, someone, and I won't say who, but because I was in the rank of journal, came up from Meadow and Oaks, which I'm still mad at you. I don't want you to think I'm not mad at you. I think, maybe you're right, maybe, yeah, no, you're right, maybe I stopped being mad at you, but I was getting old and I forgot to stop being mad at you.
That's pretty fast.
Somebody told me, Joe had said, that Brook Meadow was the trashiest part of Woodcreek, and that's why it should be. Now, this is a more informal meeting, I think. Joe right there, trashiest part of Woodcreek, and that's why it needs to be developed, and I thought, trashy. And I went down, looked at my yard, and I thought, well, I can see how. And artistic, but I can see where some someone's doing something. I'm not saying he told me that, but nevertheless, so I'm thinking.
They're paying a lot of money to.
Well, that was my comment, because anything will never be dictated to by his mother, but I promise you, he has to. And before the first meeting, I told him that it's not gonna be long, all those golf course people, and the lawns are gonna be fine, for fertilizing and watering lawns, and I'm gonna get their tax credit, because I got a national guard.
Give it 10 years.
Yeah, I know, social work. At any rate, the trouble is, something like that gets reported, and people believe it, and they tell somebody else, And I don't know the solution to that, but it's how. I've said to some of my neighbors when they said things about what's going on out there, I said, well, who told you this? Well, they say, they say. Oh, when you say that, when you say that, what do you mean? That was better. I mean, there's.
2,000 people live right now. There's a real.
Yeah.
Lots. Sold to the crop owners, it's developers in there,
Yeah.
you know, they can develop commercial stuff, they can develop. We could all those subdivisions. And they can develop what they want to, because it's out of court. So they can put a Meadow, any flood in there, I think that's different.
Walmart.
But look at it. Right now, it's here, it's not here. Growth and Windley, that, San Marcos, that's the growth. The growth is here also. Brilliant. You can't stop it. They're trying to. And so it's not. How am I going to go over this country? And you say, ignore it. Here's where we like to do it. I'm talking about junkyard and parking lots. But the kid that works. In 10 years, this place will have parks, convenience stuff, and we're out there, they like the streets, no place for kids to walk around.
Why do you do that? It's not, it isn't profitable. I can make it profitable.
Black, what was his name? Except last year. It's been out of top. Staying. So he's.
Yeah, that's the fire.
He owns it, it's pretty well. He owns all these 11, 12 lots.
He's the one who just sold, right? He sold, like, right? Okay, then. Well, they say. We were back. I know.
We'll be trade for
So it's kind of.
Yeah.
Problem is, I did my time age, and he's got a couple sons, and we're 75, so they do this and that's right. I'm getting rid of my property because my team's don't work with it, so that's what I'm trying to.
I see.
But no, it's not making enough. They bring enough money in.
I said it. Do we still have jurisdiction?
Oh,
Yeah.
If he elected.
Yeah, he's.
Well, now he's sold it. He knows.
Well, and he's easy to get along with, too. He's not.
But yeah.
Yeah.
And the city on it.
Oh, no.
It just. They don't say that in there, it's that neighborhood. But really, you can say, what this place has a lot. These other places are closing.
I just don't understand what you're saying, because I don't want to live, I don't want, I want it to stay what it is, so maybe that's La La Land. But I don't want it to live, I mean, I could go to Driven Springs if I wanted.
But silly when you like it is. It goes, you know, it's like looking in your house.
Why is it going to take?
It's like looking at your house.
So we always have to keep growing, you know, I just never had to have.
Change.
Okay, no, I hear you.
Change, I'm sorry.
Jack keeps saying we gotta get on the train, and I don't know what he means, I don't want.
It's a change, it's keeping up, it's changing. But the growth part is coming in. New ideas, income producing, wouldn't be nice not to pay any in private house.
Well,
That's. Like. You know, I feel like. Just like this. Well, I'm sure you know what. Sure. It's just, I want to. Well. Same on the tax. 25 years of this. Roads, called third world. Houses look like. And born on how to eat was costly. It's how, and a new breed of people came. Started thinking of sharp people got it. In New City. Where it's clear like shores, it's a city, it's right next to King. And so, how did it? They snuck around the side. They got some folks. So yeah, we'll be adding some to mile away. They had to have concrete streets out the city. They have million kids, each with a 9-man police. Houses are just. And I use that in what you can. If anybody live in this city, you got to back, that's all within the city limits. Inside. Where inside the community, it's all outside. It was cleverly done. You don't have to wait. You like to go back to like you want to 25 years ago. Say, yeah, well, like it's fear wall. No, concrete streets. That's one money. And they have drainage. Always the one moving
Oh, yeah.
So what I, you know, I used
Yeah,
to.
okay.
Oh,
Yeah. I'm very suspicious of that.
It's a great example. How you take. And they get something much better.
Where would be?
But it is.
Sure. Well, one is in the
You
mid,
say not talking, but
there's a,
you
there's.
don't. It used to be a charming little place, and now it's for sure. It's a problem.
It's not cost.
Is that anybody?
Go over, tell Mr. Mayor.
I know Breton, it's been since Breton.
Yeah.
Anybody in this company.
Oh, we don't have nothing to eat. Hello, right. If you want to sit yeah, no, I hear you, I just realized you built a fence around the park. Woodcreek, and not, you know, I'm sorry. I don't think we need more money, I think we just need to use what we have, well, maintain the status quo.
Yeah, I felt like I was gonna.
And you just gotta do
I say no to development and no to
don't need to. For Woodcreek, I mean, it may not be all around, maybe we can just protect our little island. Yeah. Well, wait. You see what I'm talking about?
Basically, 2 years. Well, town hall and
Yeah, yeah. So why don't we have a new employee that we want? I'm talking about, we have money, and I don't know what we're doing.
It's kind of interesting dynamic.
I'm not getting a letter, and I'm doing it wrong, and I don't understand. And I'm making it much nicer, but I made
We had to know that.
No, that's right. No, and he. No, yeah, that's not, I don't know that, you gotta have someone. So, okay, the guy wants to solve get someone. Are you ever thinking about calling? Better you to go to the golf course than I do. That's really. Why is that so hard? Bring it all. You don't think that everybody can walk with a view of the golf course and us now you should have. Well, you vote to develop Brook, Meadow, and I walked there so that I would have. Here, sit down. I'll be calm. I'll be calm. I'm still thinking about it.
Did you see? Did you see?
Well, no. And you okay a community within a community. Brook Meadow was an entity going with Brook Meadow is a neighborhood within a community. Now you make it separate. Those people, oh, I live in the coast. They're not going to be problems with Meadow, they are folks. So you've made a separate community. You're like dividing our community. Now, my real problem is not that street should have been the boundary, but you okay that 5 acres when the 90-year-old lady next door dies, her kids are going to sell it for I mean, and on Long Road, that's the problem. And you're going to be happy because, oh, it's more income. Well, my neighborhood. Now, I don't care about it. I never played it. I could have bought a home, I don't like it. Just an appeal. I bet you, they were found, you and Aurora both said, oh, it's the law. I bet that they, oh, they didn't put on how many acres of the golf. And putting 15 or 20 houses in front of your house where you bought a golf. I bet you can work on something like that. Not win. I'm not talking details, but I'm talking about you're fine about protecting something, you're not worried. I don't. talking about the new developer,
And that's what I.
the developer is not supposed to be here.
All you do is one rock, two Lord, I see those talk. It's a little present now.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense, seems to
And
me.
that's the global issue. Citizens, folks, hasn't changed that. Yeah. Law, rule of law, he says for now, if someone had development, just keep out. What we have. It's this thing on the hoax. No. The grandfather, grandfather, okay, and then it's right, so it's, yeah, the little Trump says, we don't like to see the house. Lots of you, you know, lots of you and trees and all that. That's interesting. Going here and there. 95% of the people. What was that about my grandfather? So you guys have a lot. You're wild.
No, nobody's writing about Charlene as a across the street, that's what else. Her house is on one, if Charlene was to sell that lot, that's fine. Our right, no, our right is the developer. It's 15 houses.
Big nice house. Big house. Those will, 600 hours.
That's our door set. I'm just saying that you're in a wrong, if you're all four views got impeded because a developer bought 5 acres in front of you and put 20 houses on it, I bet you all have. Even if the law is prohibited, at least you
Somebody, a lot across. Okay, somebody put a house up, I call it, so your view is an impact.
But I want to. But I am concerned about.
James, he let Jimmy out of hospitals, someone that they don't personally. And Jimmy got the hospital, you know, that's like a ball, you're smart. Oh, man.
Now I do have. 2 neighbors. So I guess. But I've got an acre. Which means they're probably something. Not really, it was just the principle of y'all caring so much about your view of the golf course and not caring at all about the nice walk Meadow golf. That's my objection.
In our opinion, is there's a guy bought the
The guy, the developer, let's call him that.
He bought Craig's
Yeah, but he bought it. What? He looked sharp, didn't he? Yeah, you think it-
You got the same prognosis.
This girl like 10. Yeah.
I've had 3 cookies today.
I bet you agree.
Thank you.
It's 30 degrees. Everybody wants to play this year.
What's the chill factor?
Let me figure it out. 1.5.
All right, calling us back in session 2:36. Right, it's been going down all morning. So we're back to the regular agenda, item number 1, and we're very pleased to have Commissioner, Chair of Planning and Zoning, Joe Katarba, with us today, and ask that if you'd like to, step up and answer any questions, give any of the report that you'd like to give on the recent Planning and Zoning Committee meeting. Was very happy to be part of at least a lot of that meeting, which I could have been there for the whole thing. Dr. Katarba.
Okay, is this working? Please speak into your microphones for those of us. I really want to thank you for this opportunity to report back to you on the ongoing work of the Planning and Zoning Commission, especially on the overlay project. And it just makes so much good sense, and maybe better sense, that we communicate regularly. And Mr. Mayor, appreciates your initiative on this. I suppose waiting for us to come up with some report at the end that's gonna be too thick to be practical. So really appreciate that. We also appreciate your efforts to complete membership on planning and zoning, and which we've been lacking members for some time now, and it's really helpful because you also gave us a long agenda of items to discuss and talk about. So that's good. That's all very good. What I have, and I think you may have a copy of it, I just kind of anecdotally, if you will, put together a list of items that we've talked about on planning and zoning in no necessary order except one is ordered. I separated out what I'm calling the legal and land management issues at the top. I think there's 9 of them. From the bottom, we have 5 items that deal with the historical and cultural aspects of the overlay proposal. Otherwise, there's no necessary ordering. Again, these are mostly put in terms of questions. And as we all know, the first thing you need to do if you're an organization or group is find out what your questions are before you start thinking about what the answers are. So that's what we've been doing. I think it's been a very good strategy for us to think about what we need to know in order to come back eventually with advice and consent. Okay, I'm going to go through these and stop me if you have. Pardon me? You go back?
Keep going. Hadn't thought about that.
Too loud?
All right. No, the camera.
Oh, it's a camera.
Just get your eyebrow.
Plowing so much camera. That's okay. Okay, let me start off. Concerns and questions for Brook Meadow, legal and land management issues. Number one, why did you choose 1 acre as the minimal size of each lot? And this is one of the first questions that came up in our talking and thinking about the proposal. And we couldn't come up with a real easy answer. And among other things, the suggestions were, some people thought about perhaps 3 acres. Other people thought about 1 acre, and so, or something smaller than that. And so kind of looking compromise was 1 acre. Well, I think it'd be good, we think it'd be good if we came up with a more systematic way and a more perhaps professional way of coming up with why 1 acre. And I think a good part of that, and we'll get into that a little bit more, in terms of marketability, which is missing from the proposal so far. What size lots are we going to set up that are going to be of lasting value to the owners? And why 1 acre? Answer that question is our question. Okay. 2, what are the sentiments of affected residents towards the proposal? The only data collected were anecdotal statements, the results of informal door-to-door survey. Neither data sets have yet to be presented to P&Z for review. We've heard just summary statements about how everybody talked to, or have been talked to about the recommendation, agree that it's a great idea. Okay, I'd like to see some head counts on that. Some of that I think will be answered, of course, when we start having public hearings and community gatherings like that to talk about it. But I really think it'd be great if we had a systematic survey of the entire city. I'll tell you why. If someone was proposing to put a Taco Bell over in Brook Meadow, now I live all the way over by City Hall, that would still be of concern to me, what's going on over there. So it's outside of the 200-foot perimeter and everything. But major issues are things that I think are relevant to everybody in a small city like ours. And so I want the city to consider doing some surveying that gets everybody's attention on this whole thing, because we all have to live with each other, including whatever's going to be going on eventually at Meadow. Okay, number 3, and interrupt me if you like, if you have questions about it. Why is formal data collection limited to the immediate periphery proposed area? I just kind of covered that now. And we'd like to hear from everybody in the city about this. Reason being is that P&Z considers this to be a very important move on the part of the city. In some ways, since I've been living here for 11 years, maybe the biggest thing we're talking about doing in a lot of ways. It's not just rezoning. It's not just lot-to-lot discussion. It's something that affects, I think, of the whole city. Okay. Number 4, what is Brook Meadow now legally? I can't get an answer to this. I did get an answer from our attorney. But you know, I don't know if everybody knows what Brook Meadow is. It's a neighborhood, it's old HOA. I think it'd be important for us to be really clear as to just what Brook Meadow is. For legal as well, I think. Kind of personal reasons. Okay. Number 5. What would the remaining residents of what is now Brook Meadow call their part of town? It's not a trick question, but the proposal does not include all the properties that are now considered part of Brook Meadow. Well, since we're only talking about a more limited part of the area, what about other people? What about the apartments? Are they still Brook Meadow? Got a problem with naming here, which I think is more than just a naming issue, because it goes back to what do you mean Brook Meadow? It should be decided by everybody who lives in Brook Meadow, not just some who want to limit what it is. Okay. What would they call? I just wonder what would happen to them. Are they losing it? That we got to deal with. Number 6. Why not propose land management legislation, city level at least, that would apply to the entire city only with exception? A different logic than what's being used right now. And that would be, what would be a way of putting regulations on land size, lot size, all those kinds of things that would apply to everybody, so that what's being proposed for Brook Meadow would be an exception to the rule for the city, as opposed to the rule that's somewhat in conflict with the rest of the city's laws and regulations. That makes sense? So it could, I think there's another way of looking at the whole thing. So that's kind of a more general kind of question, I guess. Number 7, the proposal is simply not sufficiently future oriented. How would we protect the property rights of residents who decide to sell their property according to market values and needs? And this is an idea, by the way, that was also suggested by our 3 former mayors who've been communicating with council. I think it's an important one because for us on P&Z, a big part of what we're supposed to do is planning. And planning means what's going to happen in the future, and we don't hear enough about that in the proposal talk right now. What's relevant about being future oriented? Well, again, it's the property owner's rights that I think we need to pay more attention to. So if someone has this overlay under 5 acres, passes, the state says we gotta sell this, what happens? It's not clear what the legalities and the procedures would be to change the nature of ownership, property ownership. Okay. Okay, go over to recommendation. One thing that hasn't been explored, and I just saw in a recent item issued by the city council, the notion of what else could you call this? And I call this an alternative strategies for residential coalition. We should maybe have a discussion of, is a district a better way to organize this proposal? Is some type of different subdivision a different way? Overlay is not something I think that makes automatic common sense to everybody. But also legally, I think you got some alternative kind of things. Number 8, here's why. Why don't the residents in question informally, in a neighborly way, or simply voice their commitment to the proposed style of land management? Here's my question, it's not a puzzle question. We're being told that everyone's in favor of the proposal who live out in Meadow. Okay? Well, if everybody's in favor of this proposal, why do we have to pass legislation to enforce it? All right? Everybody agrees. Is there something less formal that could be used, some procedure where people could, in a neighborly way, say, yeah, we all agree on this, so don't sell your property without consulting us, etc. I don't know. I don't know how informal you can get with this kind of thing, but I just wonder why we're going through all this legal and legislative hassle when everybody already agrees that this is what they want to do in Brook Meadow. Again, going back to maybe better data, and people really think about the idea over there. What would happen, I mentioned this before, what would happen if, and when a resident's estate would decide to sell their property? Number 9, the economics of land use today indicate clearly that a resident would have to build a large and expensive home to justify the cost of a 1-acre lot. Now, I'm talking to people in land management a little bit, real estate, and thinking about other development taking place in proposed Woodcreek recently. An acre is a lot of land. And you think about that in terms of how developers think about it, which is, well, we just can't build one house per acre, we're not gonna be able to make any money. So developers like to fill up their land with several houses, not just one. Well, land's getting expensive. And land, especially in a desirable city like Woodcreek, is going to put perhaps the owners in the position at some point of, well, I can't sell my land. It's going to be tough to do. So there's no market for 1 acres anymore, let alone 5 acres and things. But on the other hand, there's another aspect I'll get to in a second. That is, to what degree do we want that portion of the city in the future to be developed by very large houses that would make 1 acre lots for economically, financially doable? Is that what we want to do in our city? Okay. And I address this a little bit in the next section of items we've talked about. And as I finish this first list of items, I do want to mention that, and I think I will reiterate that some of these ideas were given to us by the mayors, and they gave it in a letter to me, and we talked about them, and I talked about them at our last meeting, but I didn't read their letter out in our P&Z meeting. I want to apologize for that. Okay, concerns and questions for Brook Meadow, historical and cultural issues. How would this proposal affect the historical trend of Woodcreek serving middle-class residents? Middle-class residents. I haven't heard that designation used in any of our discussions about the overlay. When we talk about Woodcreek, what is Woodcreek? Well, it's a middle-class community. It's a middle-class community in which people can come in and they can easily, if they're middle class, afford things like houses on the golf course. I mean, it's remarkable. And houses that have 3 or 4 bedrooms, mostly 3 bedrooms, of course. But that's who we generally serve here. We don't serve a lot of working class people. That's clear. So if it's a middle class community, how much are we going to change it by establishing residential areas that are going to be upper class, upper middle class? Which is what it looks like the overlay is going to really provide. Designation problem, number 2. What is meant by urbanization? I have never got an answer to that yet. We need that. Because I'm not sure why we're not being urbanized now in Woodcreek. Okay. We have Wi-Fi. Right? We have concrete streets. We have some stuff that some people say, why are we becoming a city now? Not just to be a weekend retirement home for old timers. So I'd like to get some answers. We would like to get answers on P&Z about what do you mean by urbanization as being a threat to what's going on in Woodcreek, what would be going on in Woodcreek. Number 3, what are the traditions and history of Woodcreek that we would be trying to restore? And this I find to be a puzzle. We hear, again, over and over again, that we want to restore Woodcreek to what it was. Well, I mean, philosophers, historians will tell us that anybody who tries to restore something to the past ain't going to happen. You can't do that. It's never going to be the same as it was. What was it? What does it really mean to restore something that it was? And in a way, the absence of an answer to that can be troublesome, because I don't want to go back to Woodcreek when it was 20 years ago. No way. Wireless, poor TV. I mean, no neighbors except on weekends when they came to golf. No children. I mean, this is something that I don't think is necessarily all that desirable. And P&Z would like to know what do we really do with that notion of history? What are we trying to restore? Are we trying to restore it to state-sized residences? We never had them. I don't know what that's all about. We've got to clear that up. Number 4, progressive residents of Woodcreek have indicated informally, and to some degree anecdotally, that we should be working to protect affordable middle-class housing, as I already mentioned, and not encourage and support the expansion of, as one resident put it, the landed gentry. And what this question is referring to is, what is an area that would turn out to be as a place where people live? A place that we have to explain to our visitors what's going on in there. We've had a proposal a while back to develop that area as a regular subdivision, jam houses all together, 19, 21 houses. And that's an extreme in terms of planning. When you designate responsibility for how something's developed, the company, the corporation, developer. Okay? Are we moving in the opposite direction with the overlay proposal? Okay, by giving control over fairly large areas of land to the city, by formulating legislation, strict legislation. Our question on P and Z would be, is there middle ground someplace between the corporation and the city, where people can maybe maintain some semblance of citizen control over the area where they live? Again, it's not very progressive, I think, in terms of doing these things. Sometimes we're talking about this. Number 5, what is specifically, and we don't like, what is it specifically that we don't like about Austin and Dripping Springs? So here it is, very often. We don't want to become like another Austin and Dripping Springs. Oh, what is it about them specifically we don't like? Is it the fact that all their houses have the same color roofs? Is it the distance between houses? I mean, we really need to kind of like open that up and be more specific in terms of why we want to be different than the development is taking place in other places. So the recommendation here becomes, can we achieve the middle class goals and traditions of Woodcreek through somewhat more modest legislation? Okay, I ran through a lot of items pretty quick. Are there any questions on this?
Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate the report. Raised a lot of questions. The commission did agree to move things on to public hearings, and so this would be a good time, to get some of these questions answered. And this is speaking for myself here, but this is the whole overlay concept. I originally brought to P&Z because there was concern over essentially the character of Brook Meadow, being changed, and that the 5 acres at the top of Brook Meadow would become, the 6 acres down the road, and then the 3 acres, and then Brook, the character of Brook Meadow, the reason that people moved there and bought those homes in the first place, is destroyed. Just the same as if they start putting lots on the fairway behind my house. Nobody in Woodcreek wants that. But the people that have been sort of speaking up the most about this so far have been people that don't live in Brook Meadow, don't have any investment that I know of in Brook Meadow. And so it's going to be interesting to hear what comes out of the public hearings and out of the correspondence with the neighbors. And as far as getting input from the rest of Woodcreek, they're not excluded from this process. They'll be able to come to the public hearings and have a say, just like the people from Brook Meadow. So a lot of these questions are going to get hammered out. It seems, I'm sorry to say this, but it seems a little developer friendly and a little less citizen friendly. That's something that we need to work out with P&Z, because we're not here to help the developers develop more land. We're here for citizens to have what they moved here for, and that's just my opinion. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how this goes over the next several weeks as we go through the public hearings and get the responses from the citizens. And I will open it up to questions.
I have a question.
Councilmember.
Mr. Pitarba, when you're asking for these questions to be answered, are you talking about today we try to provide you answers today? Or are you looking for maybe council to develop some documentation moving forward to attempt to satisfy these concerns?
No, these are issues and questions that we have, in trying to address the proposal. These are things we think are important to know about.
Okay, so maybe providing something.
Information.
Yeah, so maybe if we could address them, or if there was a need to having it be a part of the public hearings, is that what you're seeking? I'm just trying to understand what your action plan is for this item, aside from, we've heard it, I've listened.
We gotta make sure the public hearings are fairly represented.
Okay.
Sometimes they're not. You know,
Okay.
get everybody out there.
And that is,
Help a lot.
I had written, if I may,
It's
okay.
Councilmember Foley. Oh, go ahead.
No, good, you go.
Oh, well, go ahead.
No,
Mayor
I was
Pro Tem
going to
Monroe.
say, if I may, I had written a similar question to what Councilmember Hines. How are these going to be addressed, answered, and when?
Mhm.
And what is PSC's position on and role for the future? Because you did agree to move forward to the public hearings for the overlay. And I think that maybe at the public hearings, if citizens that have these questions need to come forward. And while you were talking, I was just thinking, we are, and as a longtime resident, I can say this, the way that we are growing, we have become a fractured city. We have 3 HOAs in the city, if not 4. 3. We have 3 HOAs in the city. We have 3 communities that are ruled by HOAs and have different perspectives than those of us who are single-family residents. So when we talk about the character of Woodcreek, each neighborhood has its own character. My neighborhood is different than Brook, Meadow. You live very close to where I live, and it's very different than Cypress Point, very different than those. But I would, and I'm looking forward to these public hearings, and I hope the citizens take the opportunity and are listening to participate, because it's the only way that we can hear and realize what it is that is going through their minds and what we can do to help. So I appreciate you raising these questions, and thank you for being here.
One of the, if I may comment on that, one of the issues is, again, a proposal like this, you're selling a proposal to the citizen. It's not just us making decisions here. It's got to go to them. It's got to go to them. And, but it's not easy, I think, to sell this type of a complex proposal. And we've heard numerous times that the overlays would help preserve the estates out in Brook Meadow, which have been there a long time, and they have a tradition of the large plots of land, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't do that at all. All it does is set up a new and different mechanism for how to sell pieces of those estates. Okay? A truly protective measure would be to have legislation that says you can't sell anything except your whole estate, right?
This only deals with subdividing property. It doesn't, I mean, if I've got a 5-acre tract, I can sell as a 5-acre tract, or I can try to subdivide it into 5 1-acre tracts. But it doesn't stop me from being able to sell. I mean, it's not a question of real estate sales, it's a question of subdivision. Correct?
I think that's, if that's the case, then you need more.
I'm sorry.
That's the
Because
case.
that's not how people are interpreting this.
Okay. Yeah, I'm having a hard time, I guess, listening to you. It doesn't sound like you really understand the legislation or the ordinance that we're talking about. If you're confused that a person can't sell their property, I mean, I'm concerned whether or not you really understand what the ordinance means. Do you think that people are going to be prevented from selling their property because of this ordinance?
I don't, but I think that should be made more clear for the citizenry.
Okay, but you understand though, right? That we're not trying to prevent anybody from selling their property.
The jargon going around about the proposal, okay, in public is that a main purpose of the proposal is to maintain the tradition of the estate. Look at the word estate. That's not 1 acre lot.
The question I asked you was, you understand that we're not preventing anybody from selling their property, right?
I'm sorry, say it again.
We're not preventing anybody from selling their property. You understand that, right?
Yes,
Okay. My understanding is P and Z is voted, wasn't it unanimous for us to go ahead and proceed to public hearings on this?
could you say a little slower, please?
My understanding, P and Z voted unanimously for us to proceed to public hearings on this question. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay. Are you in favor of us having public hearings on this matter?
yes,
Okay. And you understand that's the next step, is to have public hearings?
yes.
Okay. And you're not against that?
No, why would you ask?
I'm just curious. I'm not really sure what this is about. I just want to make sure it's okay we proceed with public hearings.
Of course.
Okay, and you understand that everyone in the neighborhood, the entire community can show up and voice their opinion about this ordinance, right? Okay, well, thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
I had one more.
One more question?
And I don't disagree that we can boost communication. Anytime there's a call for that, I think it's important to hear it. And we can definitely roll out better communication about this and heed concerns here and make sure they're addressed. With that in mind, I want to clarify something though. You referenced middle-class affordability here for Woodcreek. And this overlay proposal doesn't have anything to do with the Oaks, but the Oaks houses weren't necessarily middle-class friendly. They're upwards of $450,000 a piece for tiny lots. I mean, that's not something a middle-class family can afford. So I want to, address your concern about preserving middle-class affordability in Woodcreek with rising property values and the cost of housing. But I'm just kind of trying to understand what it is you mean by that. When you're talking about that, any kind of development in the Brook Meadow area at this point moving forward, given construction costs and land value costs, will not be accessible to middle-class families. It just won't. I mean, the houses that are even being proposed right now in the Oaks aren't accessible. It's hard to build those kind of houses anymore. The middle class essentially doesn't exist in the United States anymore. My family is working class. We purchased a house here nearly 2 years ago. I'm just kind of trying to understand what you mean by that or what you're questioning there. I mean, the idea of estate style lots is just larger lots, and that exists in Brook Meadow already. And so essentially somebody could purchase in Brook Meadow who has significant funds in the future. And again, they're still not going to be middle class. I mean, that ship sailed. So I'm just not really understanding how that has to do with this, or why that's a concern for Brook Meadow in particular. Why are we looking at Brook Meadow to carve it up and make it affordable? It's not realistic.
I don't know if it's not realistic. Probably may not be a good idea, but that's something else. I think all we need to do is to look around in terms of the world of real estate, Travis County, Hayes County, and middle-class houses now are going for upwards of $1 million. We cannot speak anymore about middle-class houses and be $300,000-$400,000. That doesn't happen. It's just not the case. Middle class is getting extremely expensive. And what I'm suggesting, and what I've been hearing from people in real estate, is that if you're going to develop your town in terms of individual 1 acre lots, right? That's extremely difficult to do in an economic kind of way. And that's why we have subdivisions. We have developers who want to do 16 at one time. It's cheaper for them, right? That's middle class housing now.
No, but he's charging over nearly $500,000 per house. That's not middle class.
Yeah.
So,
Now,
I mean,
so if someone was able to build a house on a half acre lot, that would be that much more affordable And one would have to think, what's the real cost to doing that to the city of Woodcreek to have houses on half acres as opposed to a full acre? Because a half acre is a lot of land. But it would lead to hopefully and probably a smaller house, a less expensive house to be built on it. But that's the market now. I'm sorry, I bought a house too that's now worth twice of what we paid for it 3 years ago.
Yeah. I was just trying to get direction as to why the middle class housing conversation and concerns about Brook Meadow being the location for that in the future, it doesn't seem applicable. If we're looking at affordable middle class housing, we're looking in the ETJ, we're looking at PDDs, we're looking at townhomes, different kind of development, and essentially maybe doesn't belong in Brook Meadow. And I think that's the point of the overlay, is that we're saying this might not belong here.
Okay.
If I may, I said, I think we need to look at this as two different issues. I kind of agree. I mentioned in one of when we met about the comprehensive plan, we talked about the future land use. One of the things that is happening to us, and not just to us, Woodcreek, to everyone in the Wimberley Valley, is taking longer for us to be affected by the growth that has occurred in Hayes County because we're off the main roads. I have seen the house across the street from mine that 2 years ago sold for under $200,000, sell in one day for $450,000. Nothing has been done to that house. So as far as where we are in the city limits of Woodcreek, because we have a limited supply and because we're still lower than some other areas in Wimberley, there's such demand that a working class family, somebody who's a single parent, cannot afford, they cannot even rent the apartments. The apartments are so expensive. So I think that is something that if you're looking at the future and we're looking at the ETJ, we need to have these conversations about what is going to happen to this valley when you make it so unaffordable that you're already seeing the effect on our businesses in the valley of not being able to get people to work for what they can afford to pay. But that's something that we can work. I would like to get in PNC. We need to work with that. Yeah. But about to affordability for the middle class, I think that ship has sailed in the city of Woodcreek.
I think an important.
I'm sorry to say.
I think an important piece of what you're saying is, from the seller's perspective, it's good.
Yeah.
And given the rapid increase, massive increase in the cost of property and building and stuff like this, it's going to be it would be more difficult to sell a 1 acre lot than 2 half-acre lots. Well, that's the projection I'm hearing about the future. And so we're kind of facing the future where compact housing is going to become more the norm.
Yeah.
And so that's just something we're dealing with.
I understand, and that's where I say, let's communicate. Let the citizens know these public hearings are coming, and let's see what they have to say. We're here to listen to the citizens and serve them. So let's do that.
Okay, I'd like to just thank you, Joe, for the report. And they are good questions and they need to be addressed, and we will be addressing it. Appreciate all the work of planning and zoning. I know this is a tough question. I know this probably is the biggest thing we've done in a while, if ever. And it needs to be thought through carefully. And so we're well into that process. And thanks for doing this. Did you want to add something, Counselor?
Yeah, I think there's two fundamental questions. I mean, a lot of this gets into opinion and speculation, but in terms of question 4, what is Brook Meadow now legally? It's part of Woodcreek. That's it. Woodcreek is here. It's whatever big area of land it is, and Brook Meadow is just one portion of it. It's not any separate. It's not any different. It's nothing else other than a part of Woodcreek that is potentially the subject of a zoning overlay. And then there's a mention of rights of landowners And I think it's important, and I'll say this as often as I need to, but under Chapter 245, the vested rights statute, it expressly carves out the ability of municipalities as part of their valid exercise of police powers to regulate lot size. So the rights of all landowners within municipalities are subject to the clear and express language of Chapter 245, which unequivocally allows the regulation of lot size. People can disagree practically or politically on something, but vested rights accept lot size. And a city can continue to, and I'll read one portion from a case against the city of Rowlett, where the Court of Appeals in that case found that the city's regulation of development to 1 acre lot sizes or more did not violate the property owner's rights in that case.
No one actually is disputing any of that.
Right.
We're just concerned about, let's see, how this handles it.
Correct. And I'm saying this as much for the benefit of anyone that may watch this meeting as anything else. Because if these people that do have questions, they need to be able to hear these answers as often as they possibly can. And so I get that you know that, and it wasn't solely directed at you, but trying to help answer these questions for the benefit of people that ask them.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to regular agenda item number 3, discussion and possible action to establish a council citizen advisory task force or other group to act as liaison with the Hays County Sheriff's Office representatives to advise as to the placement and timing of upcoming traffic patrols in the city of Woodcreek. That's Council Member Foley's.
Yes, sir, thank you. The purpose of this agenda item is to.
That's the motion.
Oh, okay, yeah, well, first of all, I would move as written.
I second.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Just,
Yeah,
okay.
appreciate
Go
it,
ahead.
thanks. The reason I brought this up is we're trying to come up with a mechanism, somewhat self-executing for us to be able to get traffic patrols scheduled out here. I think we can, simply do that by requesting, these guys to come out ahead of time. But I just want to visit with the council and see if it's worth, if we would like to set up maybe an advisory type committee with a council member or two and a citizen or two, just to visit once a month or so and talk about what our priorities are and, if we're meeting those priorities. So that's why it's here. I'd like to hear what everyone else thinks about that.
Mayor, may I?
Yeah, please.
I have a question. Do you foresee this committee, or maybe I should say a recommendation? I would like this committee or task force to be looking at the data as well as tickets that are coming in. That's what I was, I just wanted to specify that would be why this is there, is rather than just creating a one-day thing. It's like, oh, well, we looked at it this month and it's traffic that's somehow shifted for our focus.
I don't want to speak for you.
No, you go ahead.
No, when we talked about it, it's like, okay, so we don't want to put this all on staff. But staff needs to be involved, and they need to know, and Sheriff's Office needs to be able to stop in and say, hey, I got people in town. But a lot of it I know there's they have access to the data, and Councilmember Foley has access to the data, reading that stuff. They sort of look at that and say, hey, Sergeant Smith, notice, some activity down here, so that might be a good spot and just sort of to plan it out. But right now, what we've got is the beginnings of an agreement with the Sheriff's Department to do regular patrols, but no plan of attack. So this is just sort of develop a plan of attack and then monitor. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, and Chris, I think you're right. One of the things we can do off the software that we have, we can generate and print out reports, both historic reports and the current reports, and wherever the radar units are. So I think it'd be important to review, and I'm open on this. I may be a good idea to have a citizen council kind of group get together, once a month or whatever, sit down with the officers, just talk about our priorities, or maybe we just handle it in the house. I don't know. I'm just interested in what anybody else is and how to move on that.
Mayor, another question. Do we have citizens who've shown interest in this for you, Brett? Sorry.
There are people that have shown interest in it. There are other people who said, no, I don't want to do anything. So it's kind of a mixed bag. I've only reached out to a few people. There is some interest, but, it'll probably take some recruiting and maybe getting it out on our email blast. But no, I don't have anybody lined up, I guess is the answer. But yeah, not yet. I think we'd be able to fill that, but it's just a question of putting effort into filling that spot.
My way of thinking, if we approve this, it gives us the authority to bring somebody on. Right now, we just need this to start happening. And even if it's just council member Foley and the city manager sitting down with the deputy and going over that while we recruit, then, and whether it's, one addition, if people go, yeah, but, there are people who, as you know, are quite vocal about, traffic issues. And this gives them a chance to put their passion to work. And there may not be any. It may be a council manager task going forward, and we still accomplish the same goal. Yeah, so I think just moving on the motion would help get this thing going.
When is it gonna start? Just out of curiosity, as far as like the sheriff actually beginning to, it's already begun?
Well, what I'd like to do is start getting someone out next week. But I don't want to wait to form this committee or whatever. I think we have enough data to kind of be able to tell the officers what our priorities are. But in the meantime, we'd like to work on an advisory type, task force or whatever you call it. I think that would be fine. I'm flexible either way. I just thought I'd bring this up. But I don't want to wait. I want to get these guys out here and start working.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I call the question.
Councilmember Foley,
Aye.
Councilmember French,
Aye.
Councilmember Brook,
Aye.
Mayor Councilmember.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes.
Just a quick question. Are we going to put an email thing out, or do you want me just to try to recruit, word on the street kind of thing?
I think we can do it through an email.
Okay. Yeah, I prefer that.
I don't know where it's got the appropriate action on ordinance to amend Title 15, Land Usage, Chapter 155, subdivision design standards, 155.44 lots other than single-family residential and single-family residential lots smaller than 12,000 square feet, to remove language allowing for lots smaller than 12,000 square feet. Motion is from Councilmember Hines.
You move as written?
I second.
Second by Councilmember Drummert. Councilmember Hines?
Yes, so in the packet, there's several documents to sort of back what I'm gonna be talking about here, but I did prepare a statement to sort of explain my logic and reasoning and maybe address any concerns that might come up. I'm gonna read this quickly. So currently our subdivision code states single-family residential lots must be a minimum of 12,000 square feet to connect to state-approved wastewater facilities. And then directly below that, there is language that contradicts it. So this current language is confusing and contradictory, and it's already created significant unrest and city. It has provided a loophole for developers to effectively bypass their variance process. And I'm suggesting this very simple small edit to remove that contradictory language and limit future subdivision to 12,000 square feet minimums.
Why is this important? Right now in our zoning code, our minimum lot size for subdivision of an SF1 lot is actually
under
under
8,500 square feet. It's
8,334
square feet is the minimum we calculated using impervious coverage, maximums,
three
3 parking spots, minimum setbacks, and minimum building requirements. This means that a lot as small as a half acre, or actually just over 1/3 of an acre, can be subdivided into much smaller lots, houses bulldozed, two smaller houses put into place. Looking at lots in Woodcreek, there are many large lots that this could happen to. They're spread throughout the city. I provided a document highlighting all of them, and where all the little green squares are in the city map. By setting the standard for all subdivision to a 12,000 square foot minimum, we avoid the issue of this higher density development. And it will still allow developers to request a variance for smaller lots, but will now force that variance process, which gives the city more leverage to protect its citizens from unwanted higher density development in areas where it is not appropriate. Yes, this same area of code has been sent to P&Z for review and to the comprehensive plan work group as well. There will likely be further edits and suggestions to come in the future. This ordinance does not interfere with that process or disrespect their needed input. This actually helps those groups by taking some of the pressure off of them and their timeline to address this area of code. It could be a year or more before we have the comprehensive plan and future land use document finalized and approved. By passing this ordinance now, we are making minimal changes with a significant impact to the well-being of our residents. I've worked on calculating the minimum lot averages for most of our city, and in all the areas that I've completed, the average square foot for SF1 is actually over 12,000 square feet. So this is a perfect number for us to use as the future average for like development for the rest of the city. So we're just continuing with similar development that we already have. By striking out this targeted language, we are enacting a minor change, and we avoid issues with subdivision for commercial or mixed use or multi-resident structures like duplexes and apartments or even townhomes, since those are not classified as single-family residence zoning in our city code. Those actually all fall under different types of zoning and language guiding those developments. And so that language guiding their development is actually preserved and left untouched by this ordinance proposal. Additionally, this does not impact existing plats or lots or the ability to build on them, since they are not being considered for subdivision. Subdivision is non-existing plats proposed. When this issue came before council the first time, we did not have an ordinance in place to pass or act upon, but we did have significant support for change and the acknowledgement that the wording in this area is not only contradictory, but also problematic. I'm asking now that council take initiative and act on those concerns today. I am asking that council passes this ordinance in order to eliminate dangerous and confusing loopholes that are being used to bypass our variance process. Any questions?
Only question I have, if there is an odd lot that may be less than 12,000 square feet, that the person that owns the lot can still come forward with and request a variance.
Absolutely. It doesn't impact being allowed to request a variance. That is still preserved. All of this does is set the minimum for future subdivision at 12,000 square feet. It doesn't change anything else.
Got it. And this kind of takes away the inconsistency between 155.43, then you got 155.44 that's consistent. You're eliminating that inconsistency.
Yeah, the confusing language that essentially we address minimum for SF1, and then right below it we say, oh, but there's exception possible, and really that should prompt the variance process, but the language is lacking there, and it causes an issue. And so by striking these few words, essentially we're just eliminating that oh, but there could be an exception, and it doesn't change because that second portion of code is actually about non-single family residential lots. So that needs to stay. I know in initial discussions we talked about striking that whole section, and it actually needs to stay because it regulates other kinds of development. So by just removing that exception for lots other than 12,000 square feet, we're basically saying, no, you can't do lots smaller than 12,000 square feet. That's our city minimum for subdivision, and if you want something less, you have to go through the variance process.
I would advise against this if you're trying to achieve the intended goal, because there's mandatory language under Texas law. And essentially what this says, it opens the door to an argument that if you want a lot less than 12,000 square feet, and you check the boxes on the other requirements, which are ability of the existing proposed street system to handle the traffic, availability of water and wastewater, capability of providing adequate fire protection and provision. So essentially, send it over to the engineers. Engineers say, yep, you can check all those boxes, you can provide all those things, do all those things. That then opens the door to a mandatory approval argument. The variance process already exists. If you want to strike it, I say you strike the whole thing, but don't create an avenue for someone to say, I've got something less than 12,000 square feet. I propose 3,000 square feet. Now, it's practical, no, but you don't want to open the door to mandatory approval. If you want to remove development of less than 12,000 square feet and do it, and someone can always apply for a variance, and it's considered through that process. We don't need to say there's a variance process over here, 12,000 square feet. Oh, by the way, if you want to go less, apply for a variance. It already exists.
We're not doing that, bud. We're just striking the language that says, and a single-family residential lot smaller than 12,000 square feet.
But I think what Bud's saying is that if you take that out, you still have this loophole.
Yes.
No, because it's lots other than single-family residential. Is the. Right.
Okay, what do you think of that, Bud? If it is referring only to, if it's saying other than single-family residential, then that loophole would only apply to anything that's not single-family residential.
You literally advised us to keep this because it addresses other kinds of development. You said it needs to be there. But that this section that allows for this loophole where somebody can come in and avoid the variance process and get smaller lots.
If you want to make sure, so the reason that it refers to single-family residential is because under 155.43, that provides the definition for single-family residential lots.
Right.
The language in 155.44 is intended, as I read it, intended to provide a juxtaposition to 155.43. But the property would still be zoned single-family residential. Wherever it is in the city, it would have a zoning classification that would apply to it, that would give it the right to be used for single-family residential purposes. What I'm saying you don't want to do is take these two ordinances, one, this property zone for single-family residential purposes, and then over here, another ordinance that says anything less than 12,000 square feet can be considered. I think it creates a loophole.
So I'm gonna, if I may, I guess I've gotten a little lost. So the wording I read here in 155.44,
Right.
lots other than single-family residential. Could you describe what lots other than single-family residential are?
So single-family residential is a term of art. It is a term that is given specific meaning by its usage in Chapter 155.
Could you be more specific to my question?
Okay, I ask it again. I want to make sure I get it right.
What would you define as lots other than single-family residential?
Anything other than, as I read, anything other than 155.43.
Right.
So
in our subdivision code, we need something to address other kinds of lots, because when a subdivider comes in,
That's the variance process.
right. And so that is preserved by leaving that language there.
We don't need to preserve it in multiple places. The process already exists. Someone can already say, I see what 155.43 says, but I'd really like to do something different. I'm going to apply for a variance. That's the process. It already exists.
So so here's how I read it, and I'm
Yeah.
just going to continue on my questioning.
Yeah.
The chapter is called subdivision.
Right.
Now, there are subdivisions that are other than residential.
Okay.
We could have a business section, and they go, oh, I want to subdivide this plot into multiple business plots.
Yep.
Leaving this section 155.44 would allow this chapter to be able to speak to that. Because
And in subdivision for townhomes, in subdivision for duplexes, I mean, we need some code about that. And so this leaves that. This allows for, these are the guidelines for anything other than SF1.
4, 2, 3, and 6. And all.
I don't.
One at a time, please.
I'm sorry.
Councilmember Bully.
Well, I think what Bud's saying is that it'd be better to get rid of this whole thing, because you could come in and ask again for a commercial lot. As long as you fit this criteria, you could have a 4,000 square foot lot. You could have a multifamily zoning type, or a multifamily type development. As long as you fit that criteria, you can shoehorn it into a smaller lot. I think Bud's saying take the whole thing out.
Yes.
Their minimum's 12,000.
That's right.
And then whatever it is, it's got to go through the zoning process, because you're leaving open for other uses other than single family can use this loophole here. So I kind of agree.
If that's your
Just take
goal,
it all
yes.
out.
You still have to match whatever you're zoned as, no matter what. So you cannot come in and just decide to subdivide and do something else without matching your zoning. So I'm just confused, because in a previous meeting, you truly recommended that we not eliminate all of that. And you were saying that we do need language in this area about this. And so I took that recommendation and developed this ordinance to eliminate the loophole, essentially. The loophole, okay, so my understanding is this is design standards for subdivision. If somebody owns a piece of property, whatever it's zoned as, they still have to meet that zoning unless they,
Yes.
undo their plat and request a new plat or
Yes.
new zoning. And that's a variance process on its own.
Mhm.
But if you come in and you're zoned single-family residence, then you have to meet the single-family residential lots under 155.43. But if you're not zoned single-family residence, if you're zoned for, like, let's say townhomes, right? You buy a lot in the area that's zoned for townhomes, then we need 155.44 as guidelines for being able to put in townhomes, because they might be on smaller lots, and we need to establish how small those lots can be. And that's where we need all that language about, okay, can the road take this? Can we put in duplexes here? You're zoned for duplexes, but will the traffic be appropriate? Is the drainage appropriate?
Wait a minute. Okay. I think that this is kind of my concern. I express my concern. And I think that the reason we're specifying the single-family residential. Okay, I understand what Councilmember Pooley said about 155, 153, Title 15 chapters do not in every instance coincide. They say different things for the same type of construction. That is part of the process we're involved right now, to make them all consistent and to make them appropriate to a comprehensive plan and future land use. Why I find this, to me, as a compromise. I said a few minutes ago, the housing crisis that we're having in this valley. In our future land use, most of our building is going to occur in our ETJ. And it is and at that point, you may have certain type of housing that may be, whether it's a duplex, a townhome, that somebody that builds garden homes for over 50, and it's still, each person retains ownership of its home and lot. So you may have lots that are less than 12,000 square feet, but those are not zoned single family. They're not zoned SF1. They would not be categorized as SF1s. So I think if this is specific to an SF1 law, I kind of say we will review it again when we do the comprehensive plan overall review of Title 15. But for this interim, I withdrew my objection to this item. But I do think that you need to specify that it's a single family. I don't understand why that is a problem in your legal world.
Okay, I just want to point out, because we're talking about SF1, this would affect everything from SF1 through 6.
But see, the reason why I thought we needed 155.44 is because we do have other types of development. And so we can't remove guidelines for other types of development entirely from our subdivision code, because somebody could buy a lot, want to develop in a different way, right? And so there needs to be guidelines in place for how to develop other than single-family residence.
Okay, so even if we assume it is purely limited to that, then what we have is someone that could come in for some other purpose and I think say, you've really got no lot minimum. So if you show that the infrastructure needs, or we can meet the infrastructure needs, then there's the mandatory approval language. My concern is that with any kind, unless we expressly state a minimum size.
It is. They did one foot above. Sorry.
I have a question on this. They say that it is this loophole and mandatory approval.
Right.
But it says in the first sentence, will be considered on an individual basis based on the ability, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, anything that you want to do sort of automatically goes into variance.
Under Texas law, when someone submits a plat application to subdivide, essentially what the law says is it intentionally takes discretion away from cities so that things don't become hyper-political. And if the requirements are met, the baseline requirements are met, there is mandatory approval under Texas law. And so when you take away, for anything other than single-family residential, when you take away the lot minimum size, and you simply say, will be considered on an individual basis based on the ability to meet checkpoints A, B, C, D, E, and F. If they meet checkpoints A, B, C, D, E, and F, it then opens the idea of mandatory approval, which I don't think we want to do.
Let me ask, this is the second.
Yes.
Why, I don't think we're reading the same paragraph. I'm not even.
I
think we are talking specifically of SF1.
No, SF1 through 6 are all single-family residents.
SF1 through SF6, single-family residents, okay? We're talking specifically single-family residents. If the lots are zoned something else, then this would not apply.
I think you want to set a lot minimum for lots other than single-family residential as well.
But
Well,
we know that.
We
already recommended that to comprehensive plan. Like that's happened. So 155.43 addresses single-family residential lots. It establishes that the minimum lot size should be 12,000 square feet. Nobody's touching that. We have a minimum lot size in our subdivision code for single-family residential lots. 155.44 addresses lots other than single-family residence. We're removing the language that allows that loophole where it says, and single-family resident lots that are 12,000 square feet. That's all we're trying to remove, is that single phrase and loophole. It does not change minimum lot sizes, which are already established above. It does preserve an ability for people to subdivide with other kinds of development and gives guidelines, meaning we have to approve it. And I'm really concerned right now, and I'm going to be kind of a jerk here, because you advised people in an executive session that mandatory approval was needed because of this same code, and this is public knowledge. I'm not disclosing anything that was discussed in executive session, but essentially the justification was given that this code forced mandatory approval because of this loophole. Now we're trying to remove it, and you're saying it still gives mandatory approval, which I'm sorry, it's not sitting right for me. We need some progress in this area. We need to,
Right.
and removing all of 155.44 was established as not desirable either. So how do we allow development for non-single family residential homes in subdivision and
Because,
strike this? What is your proposal to fix it?
I think if you want to make it apply to anything other than single-family residential, but you still want to set a lot size minimum.
Which we will do through the comprehensive planning work group, which is trying to establish the minimum lot sizes in the zoning code, which they already exist using our impervious coverage ratings, parking requirements, minimum setbacks, and building size requirements. So there.
If I may have, this may be a very simple, stupid question.
Sure.
If we leave 155.43 as written, and simply delete 155.44, will that work for you? Because what we're trying to say here, what council members trying to do is close the exception that is in 154. So if you remove the exception paragraph,
Right,
I'm just trying to achieve the goal. I mean, we're going around in circles. Would you answer that question? Would removing that section have the effect desired without troubling you?
I like the idea of striking the single family, because I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to take away the exception that's existed. I think that's a good thing. I agree with it. But what it's doing is it's still allowing that loophole for something other than single family residential. So if you want to close that out, make that same lot size minimum requirement apply to everything and say lots other than single family residential. The minimum lot area dimensions, take that 12,000 square foot language or something larger and apply it to lots other than single family residential. So we've got those minimums in. So
townhomes do not sit on large lots, neither do duplexes. So how do we create subdivision code for non-single family residential lots? You're saying we need another, I mean, we're literally just striking and single family residential lots smaller than 12,000 square feet. That's all we're asking to do here. You're saying now we can do that, but you want to add a minimum for lots other than single family residential.
what I am saying is that if the exception will still exist for lots other than single family residential. And to the extent that you were wanting to address that broader, more comprehensive issue, it will still exist. I think that there's some good stuff here, but there will still be an exceptional loophole within the Code of Ordinances that you may have to contend with.
Okay.
I don't know if I had any other questions. Sorry. Let me just go real quick. I mean, it looks like what we're dealing with is either we're going to strike just that phrase and for lots smaller than 12,000 square feet, or we're going to strike that whole paragraph. I mean, that's our decision. Okay, well, in the head, right. So either we just strike that part of the sentence, or we strike the whole thing, and that's what we're trying to struggle with. And I think what Bud is saying is that if you just strike that phrase, then you leave a loophole for anything other than single family to come in and get really small lots. If we're okay with that, then let's just strike that portion of it. If we want to start fighting about a lot size for everything, then we have to strike the whole thing, and then somewhere else establish a minimum lot size for everything. I think either way is fine. It's just a question of how far we want to go. So.
I think that's well put. And if I wasn't clear, and please understand, I'm not criticizing the effort you're putting in. I think it's good.
That's not the issue. I'm just trying to understand the logic of, at one hand, we need to provide for subdivision for things other than single family residential lots. That's a need. And on the other hand, I don't know that establishing a unified minimum lot size for everything other than single family residential
is realistic or achievable here. Or, I mean, that's what I'm confused about, because we're being told, council's being told that lot sizes should be under zoning, not in subdivision. And then we have you advising us that you need lot size here as well. And I'm a little bit concerned about that.
Okay.
That break in logic.
And you're reading my mind. And I'm glad that for 3 years, I have been saying that Title 15 needed major revision, and and there were several drafts that were submitted that have sat for about 3 years. I never understood the lots that you have. For example, there's still, in our neighborhood, there's one lot left to be built. The lots that are left in most of Woodcreek, the city, are less than 12,000 square feet. There's some large ones, but they're not as many as you have in Brook, Meadow, as an example. So why is this? That's what I'm saying. Taking it out, this should not be in subdivision. What you're basically saying, you're saying somebody comes into the ETJ and has a large, and it wants to build a new housing development. They're going to be single-family homes. So what the chapter says is, in this case, they have to be 12,000 square feet. If you are a builder and you're going to buy one of the small lots up on Canyon Creek Drive, which there's several, then your lot's not going to be 12,000, and you have to follow the building regulations for lots smaller than 12,000. But that's why I say, get rid of it. It doesn't belong in subdivisions.
Is the suggestion to strike the entire section? You're saying that would be the best way to move forward, is to strike that entire section?
It will eliminate the loophole, but real quick, I want to get to Aurora, what you said. There is not a disconnect in the way that it should be. I think what the planner said, I think what Brenton has said is correct. That being said, someone that comes to the city and seeks to develop within the city is entitled to take advantage of the code of ordinances written. Just because we've got something in what is seen as the wrong place doesn't mean they can't take advantage of it. I'm not saying this needs to stay in section 15. All I'm saying is
it needs to stay in section 15, but not in chapter 155.
The point is, it is where it is, and if someone applies to do something with their property in the city now, they can take advantage of it because that's what the city's laws say.
Unless we make the change that is being requested today.
Or
a change similar to that.
That's
if the change is approved by council,
right,
then it becomes effective.
It becomes effective for single-family residential lots, not for any other type of lots, in which case the loophole would exist.
It becomes effective for single-family residential lots in a subdivision.
Deborah, are you opposed
Is that
to
what you're
striking the whole
saying?
thing?
I was under the impression that we needed to leave this section to address development that was not single-family residential lots. Now, if we don't need this section and we can strike it, then let's strike it. We can issue the amendment right now and get it done. But my concern is, where in our subdivision code does it then address not single-family residential lots?
It gives, I'm sorry, if I may.
Go ahead.
If the goal, I'm working, like I said, and I objected to this initially, and then because I know that there's ways to work with the future development. But looking realistically, if this is an issue at this time for the city of a developer coming in with a plan that is requesting that, we're looking to the future. By the time we finish doing Title 15 and the chapters, we may be into 2023.
Could be.
Can we afford to wait? I think the person who's proposing it is saying no. So why don't we deal with what we have on the table now? And if you have issues with this legally, let's find an option and then take a vote.
I can tell you, practically speaking, you can probably pass this as is right now I wouldn't sign it in blood, but there will probably be no problems. However, a loophole will exist, and you probably want to address it or close it sooner than later because someone could come and take advantage of it.
But they would still have to have it zoned as non-single family
Yes,
residence.
that's correct.
And so they could not buy an SF6 lot and use this loophole.
Correct.
Because, so this essentially does what we needed to do and leaves building subdivision requirements for non-single family residents. Mhm.
Okay, so lots of back and forth here. You know, there's a motion on the table
Right.
that's clear. We have a second. There is an alternative to just strike the whole section. You know, I say take a vote on the motion. If it fails, then we can,
I have one more question for
Yeah.
clarification. If we strike this as total, just this whole
Right.
15544, it then points, if anyone in a non-single family zoned property
Right.
wishes to subdivide, it points to zoning, correct? To look for sizes.
Yes.
Okay, so there is some mechanism still in existence if we strike this off.
Yeah, and I don't have them all committed to memory, but yes, and that is where it should be anyway.
Well, can we,
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, do we, maybe amend to just strike all of 155.44 and see if that flies, or?
I'm on board with that. I don't know if y'all remember, but that's what I originally suggested we do. And I wrote this ordinance as is because since that meeting to today, essentially, there was further communication and concern over a person being able to subdivide for something zoned other than SF1, because that need might arise in the future, and there was not any kind of clarification on that process. So I'm open to either. I'll support either. I just want to get this loophole closed.
okay, let's, if somebody wants to make that amendment,
Did he just make that amendment?
Yeah, I'll make the amendment to strike
strike
155.44
in entirety.
I
second.
155.44, all of it.
Not just,
Right.
So that-
Not just A, I mean,
Is the,
is that the only part, or B?
Yes, there is a B.
Okay, do we want to strike all or just A?
You would have to strike it all because it's the entire,
Okay, I've got it up here somewhere.
there would be no reason to leave B after that. Mhm.
Yeah, I guess strike it all.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion to strike 155.44 in its entirety, seconded by Council Member Rummert. We'll vote on the amendment.
Councilmember Foley,
Aye.
Councilmember Hines,
Aye.
Councilmember Rubber,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Brook,
Aye.
All right, so the amendment passes, so we'll vote on the main motion as amended.
Councilmember Hines,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Brook,
Aye.
Councilmember Foley,
Aye.
Councilmember Rubber.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Unanimous, and move forward with that. I would also ask that we remember this is, hanging out there and look at any potential loopholes and or to make sure that we've got all that settled, so. Because this is exactly the thing that, just strike that whole 44. I mean, so that was my original thought from months ago, so.
What's the process? Do I need to resubmit or does it get handled? Do I need to resubmit the document showing that in that exhibit A or whatever?
No, we can handle it.
What's that?
We can handle it.
You want to get wrapped?
Yeah, we can handle it. All we do is,
Okay, so that goes on the pending list.
Point of personal preference, take a quick recess.
Yeah, we'll take let's take a 10-minute recess. We'll be back at 10 after 4.
You good? We're good?
they're still on. They're always live till we turn it off.
Class, just 10 minutes, that's.
I know, I thought. I skipped that.
So, what's like saying? It's like it was.
And so essentially last week, we talked about how we need to do all of that. There's actually lots of
Well, we purchased the time. But I'm thinking, we got it for 50 hours. It was already screwed up, it's still under warranty.
So it's over.
No.
It is, it just went out. I know. It's just.
I'm really.
And they just, I don't have a ball. It's more, it's just getting at, my ball set.
I always used to say, deep, you know, into the, say, deep pumps in the bottom.
I can't say. Big baby is not appropriate. This is free, right? He said, yeah.
This time, but not next.
No, he doesn't, no. He doesn't. I mean, but the thing is, and I have my friend, I mean, she's very ill now, but I have a friend in Austin. Yeah, she's a. If she tells me, I mean, I remember one time we were having a discussion with the battle with the, was a case, the wrong case, and she cited the case, and she said, It was one of three, and she's amazing. So, but I never forget that. He said, no, I don't have to check the side. You tell me that's the way it is. That's the way it is. And she helped us in our agency because look at things. Okay, let's see. Let's stay in the.
You gonna start cleaning up already?
Well, it's just.
Just.
You know, I just, why don't I? That's, but you have the PFC and then you have the, I thought, I couldn't go on mine. She came from Mississippi, which was the teacher. So that's my background. But that was and she died, lung cancer. She was smoking for years.
I know.
Died quickly. And I couldn't go to her services. They have a visitation for Congress today. And they did. If Frank and Barbara Council, when they both worked at Landowners at the store, and this Barbara is, but they.
No, that's fine.
It's been a long time.
If you don't have those moments, you're not actually debating anything.
Yeah, if Barbara Thompson is here, so this. She's
That's right.
Have you seen?
Well,
Have you seen it? No, I haven't. Happiness.
and then
Only the new neighbors that live in the yard. With Jeannie. Two Spalding.
Meeting.
Yeah, I think they go by 55 miles.
You know, I told him the other day, I said, you heard of this Basilica Festival? That is not. Okay, that's 55 miles. That's all Sagrada.
I need to stop and talk to our new neighbors like that.
The tradition.
I need to stop. I need to stop.
But Jean had all that exotic. Oh, this thing is tacky. They pay $450,000 for that. I have no talking city business, I'm talking.
Yeah, you're right.
No, I'm in here.
Yeah, this is the meeting. I know the house they're talking about. They'll probably change it.
No, they don't. They keep that. They go just little.
Oh, she literally just bought it and it's done that. Oh, I thought you were talking about the studio. They have on there too.
I took her over there. It's freezing out.
Yes, they finally canceled my son's soccer practice. I was just like, I can't believe they were letting it go on.
So has it been 11 minutes yet?
Well, you said 4:10. You said we're gonna break for 10 minutes. So it was 11. You got 1 minute.
Maybe, yeah, it just depends on how late this goes.
So are we, this is a presentation thing or?
No, no, it's a workshop discussion, feedback questions.
Okay.
All right.
We're live.
All right, thank you. Going back into session, it's 4:10. The final item on the agenda is a workshop. This is something that I've actually been wanting to do for a while. To go over, a few, there've been some questions raised on how we're doing business because it's different from what's happened, in the past. This is just a way for us to be able to ask any questions, provide feedback, provide guidance on how to do it better. If we need to tweak some things, but it is meant to be a conversation and not a presentation. Now, saying that, this isn't a presentation, but it is in that I've been working with this one organization for about 40 years. And there's one thing they understand, really well, it's governance, and what it's like to serve in a body like this. Now, in our cases, it was always like an international board of directors or some other governing legislative group, not a city. But as I looked through some of this training I had in the past, I said, all you have to do is insert city where it says organization, insert council where it says board, and it's really good stuff. And I just wanted to hit a couple of things that came out of that, and that is that one thing is that governance is a team sport. We were elected by the citizens of Woodcreek to work together to get things done. And working together to get things done doesn't just mean, the elected members. It's working with the staff, working with contractors that we might bring in, and playing as a team, as a cohesive group. And in that, there really isn't room for individual agendas. We have the agenda. We were elected, the staff is paid by those citizens from their tax money. And so we flat out work for the citizens of Woodcreek, which we all are. So we get to be self-employed too, which is a good thing. It's an honor to serve here. The fact that we earned the respect of the citizens of Woodcreek, and that they would go to the ballot box and cast a ballot and check our names off. That's a tremendous honor and a great deal of responsibility. And you should be immensely proud of yourself for that. And if you were brought in here as an employee or a contractor, you should also be immensely proud to be serving this body and the citizens of Woodcreek, and to take extra special care of the resources that we have, which are our budget, which are our volunteers, our staff, and each other. So I just hope that we all do that. And I'm not going to get into a lot of this stuff. I'm a big sort of believer in servant leadership. It resonates deeply with me. But in what we do, we truly are people, and in our time, and make the determination that everybody is going to agree, and we're not going to agree with everybody, but it's our job to listen and learn and go on it. we have no individual authority as council members. We are a body. I want to remind people that, we do act as a group, so that when a vote is taken, whether you were on the winning side of that vote or not, it is what we've decided to do, and it's the law of the city, and we're going to do it. You don't speak on behalf of the organization without authorization, and we have certain duties. These are actually kind of interesting. I'm not going to dig into them a whole lot, but there are 3 legal duties of service. This is relating to board service, but I think it applies to us too. The duty of care, the duty of obedience, and the duty of loyalty. And the duty of care just attaches to you individually. It's how you handle yourself, how you protect confidential information, how you're responsible, how you do what you say you're going to do. And that duty continues beyond your service. I mean, if you are elected to this body, you're always, council member. So I think that's forgotten sometimes. It's just like, I lost the vote and I'm out of it. So, it just can't really work that way. You can disagree and you can bring up new ideas and try to change things, and that's great. But you do have that duty. And then the duty of loyalty speaks to the situation at hand. It's eliminating motivation for personal gain. It is what it sounds like. It's loyalty. It's the best interest of the organization, but it's not like, well, you serve me as member, so you need to be loyal to me. That's not it. We're going to disagree. One of my favorite things to do is to disagree and to argue, and that's not being disloyal. It's just being us. But your loyalty is to, again, the city of Woodcreek and the citizens here. And then finally, the duty of obedience applies to us as a whole. That we follow the law, we follow the policies, the rules, the ethics. One of the things that I think we've done really, really well is engage in open dialogue and to participate in the dialogue. It can get a little raucous, but citizens that I hear from, just tell me over and over again, it is so cool, that y'all are actually having open discussion, and that you're working these things out for us, and that, that's pretty cool. The rest of it is just, we wanted to go through sort of the processes that have been worked out, and one of the ones that was sort of in question or had been brought into question is just the agenda process and getting things going. I apologize because, it's still kind of working its piece out. I mean, it's not a perfect system, but boy, it's really worked great in terms of getting stuff in.
It's getting better.
Yeah, we're working on, the first thing we did, was send out the spreadsheet with all the information on it, and it's like, go, geez, that's like, so that's sort of bending the TOMA rule. So just, say, okay, that's a good thing to quit doing. One of the things that I really trying to work on, it's been hard, is just to move the process up enough so that it's not always Friday afternoon that the agenda is going out. We're getting the information in, but it's just like, we're still working through the process a little bit, and what comes in on the forms isn't exactly always what needs to go into the agenda. So we have to adapt, going in. Well, we found out that adapting going into the Muni Code agenda format, well, gosh, the cover sheet is still from the original entry, downloaded into a spreadsheet, and then that's turned into the cover sheet. And well, there's a little discrepancy between what's actually posted and then what cover comes in the agenda. So we need to watch that kind of thing, and I think this time we did a really good job of that.
That's good.
So every time it gets a little better, it kind of gets a little faster, and it's like, and we're gonna keep doing it until it breaks, and it's and You've already got in your inboxes link to the regular meeting March 9th, for your agenda item. So we'll be doing it again. But it is a clean process. It's not contrary to public comment. There's no, there's no collusion between multiple council members, trying to get things done. There's not, I don't personally feel any bending of the rules if ask a council member whether you want, whether this should be first, second, or third on the agenda. But we're just sort of putting it together. The agenda is not created by committee. I mean, we get all the information separately, but the actual building of the agenda is done strictly by city manager, the mayor pro tem, and myself. And not always mayor pro tem. I'm sorry, Aurora, but I have to kind of. I'm used to doing everything on my own, being a CEO type, and so I just sort of get it down and say, yeah, I've got a mayor pro tem. I'll just bring my partner in crime into it. So and I try to do better on that. But if there are any questions or comments about the agenda process, we'll have to hear them.
Mayor, can I say something about
Please.
this? And it's working out great because what we want to see is whatever your agenda item and your cover sheets, everything, because that way we can just move it right over without any corrections. And this last time was almost perfect because when
you say that your cover sheet, are you wanting us to produce that cover sheet?
No.
I thought, okay, no.
So, okay, so the process is, you answer those questions on the form.
Right.
And when it goes in, and it includes, sort of a description, financial impact, all this stuff becomes part of the cover sheet. So, so that all comes into Microsoft Forms. One of the options in Microsoft Forms is to look at the individual responses, or to download a spreadsheet of all of the responses. So what we do in order to create the cover sheet is to download that Excel form, merge it into a Word document that creates the individual cover sheets. So whatever you submit goes exactly as you submitted it into an Excel spreadsheet, which goes exactly as you submitted it into the cover sheet. And if it needs to be amended because of language or whatever, we want to try to do it in a spreadsheet and then give that to Brenton, for building the Municode agenda, so that everything is good. And if everything is good going from that spreadsheet into Municode, then I literally just push a couple of buttons and have the cover sheets.
right. And the thing is, what we do is we'll go ahead and copy whatever your agenda item is. And then when the mayor creates everything, we just download that whole document. And then that's when, if there's a discrepancy in there, that's when we have to go back through and start changing things. This last time it worked out great, but I don't think we had anything we had to go back and change in a cover sheet.
Yeah. So, but any of this, if you see it, if you get the agenda posting and have questions, I mean, I do apologize because I want to try to get just a draft, to y'all. I don't want you to see the agenda when it gets posted. I want you to at least have a chance to look at how things came together, before it actually hits the website or gets posted. And we sort of failed y'all on that. And it was in a way because I think we just sort of, erred on the side of too much caution after kind of blowing it on the first go round. But it's we will be more aware of that. I'll ask staff to help remind me to make sure that happens. Good. Okay. That's back to that was the agenda process. Use of available resources, and we'll probably ask feedback from staff on this. I mean, our resources are fairly vast. I mean, we have budget, we have staff.
We do. And one thing that has in the past, and that's always going to be changed, is that when there is a billable person being contacted, at least the mayor needs to know, since he's the budget officer, that's going to come through. Because we got Bud The biggest billable person we have, as in height.
Yeah, he's a tall boy.
And then the engineers, they're billable. So, and that's where, when we draft the budget, that's, estimating how much we're going to be spending. But as long as the budget officer knows that, okay, these things are going on, because it can run up as a large bill, especially now since we're working on the comprehensive plan. We have our engineers, and all this stuff, and every one of those things, I'll get a bill and it could be $4,000. And the mayor might not know about it, I might not know about it. And so those are the things
Until we
we gotta be, and we're always conscious about the actual money that we're spending to contact these people. And I just, and of course it's just a budget amendment, but it's great if the mayor knows, since he is actually the official budget officer.
Yeah, and I have to say that council has come to me and said, I have a question about this, and I have said, you've got Bud's number, call him. I mean, it's like cut to the chase.
Yeah.
And I think that we just have to be, careful about spending a whole lot of time. But we have learned a few things like that. We can write pretty darn good ordinances ourselves, and that's fine. I mean, we should be doing that. I had a misperception of that. I thought that if it was an order, it had to be written out of Bud's office, and it wasn't. And that's my mistake.
He writes them better.
No, I just don't. I want to cut his wages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's funny because it's like if Bud were staff attorney, if he was on salary, I mean, it'd be a whole different deal.
Oh yeah.
Just like and that was one of the uses of resources we're talking about. If you've got an agenda item that you're thinking about, your best source is sitting right over there. Call Brenton, say, I'd like an hour. When can you meet? His hours, by the way, are not time to work. He's there 30 years, days later. Like every day.
Yeah, I'm usually 8 to 5.
Yeah, and spend the time with Brenton. Talk about how best to present that before you ever submit it on the form. Just sit down and do that. It's okay. It could save you a lot of save us a lot of time. And then just you may not agree, and you're still perfectly able to submit an agenda item that the city manager may not exactly agree with.
No, that doesn't matter to me, but the main thing is I want to make sure that it is submitted properly.
It's submitted properly. It's legal. It's not going to break the bank.
Yeah.
Since we are talking about the creation of ordinances, could I ask some questions in regards to that? Because it might be information everyone else might find interesting.
That's what this is for.
Great.
Honestly.
So this one is actually going to be a legal question, I think, but you might both be able to answer it. I was curious as to the weight of the whereas section and what is its purpose or intent? I understand that I was reading a document on the legality of the whereas where somebody in the whereas said that he was going to become partner, but in the body, it never said that. So the court threw out his argument that he has become a partner because it's not in the body. So I thought, so maybe my conception of what a whereas section is not clear.
Fluff, precatory words,
So
wishing
more of
words.
a, like opening argument, kind of.
Sure. Yeah, I mean,
it is.
like in every time, and Brent can answer this as well. I mean, in every contract that I draft, there's recitals exist to lay the groundwork, to set a foundation, to establish a baseline of understanding. But the full force of a contract or an ordinance or a deed or any other writing is established by the substantive body where the parties actually agree, or the voting body actually what they approve. I mean, it's like looking at debate in the legislature in advance of passing legislation or the legislative history. I mean, it's all good stuff. It's instructive and informative, but to the extent that there's a conflict, a court's going to look to the actual law.
Yep.
And I can argue and I can say, well, hold on, council member so-and-so said these things in passing it. But if the ordinance says something different, that will always control.
Great. So, I've been recently trying to create my own full, hopefully legal document to present as an ordinance. And since I knew there was confusion, I agree. I initially thought that you had to write them at first.
Right.
Brenton has since offered and says, well, I can do that too.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went, this is going to come out wrong. But then I went, maybe I can do it.
You can.
too.
Yes.
You sure can.
So, which is what I didn't know that was possible. But so now there is points where we have drafts and second readings. And so I'm wondering questions about, is a second reading a requirement of any kind?
So basically, the draft ordinance can be adopted at that meeting. It's always highly recommended if you make changes to that draft, they come back to the next meeting, because that way the citizens see the changes made, but it doesn't have to.
So is there?
And that would be a second reading.
Well, it would be a second reading, basically, yes.
Thought it was
Right, with the changes.
Is there distinctions to levels of edits, such as we go, oh, grammatically, there shouldn't be a comma here, it should be a period, or, oh, they forgot to capitalize this. Now, is that something that also should come back again?
No. No, it's when you actually change the substance of it.
Yeah. That, and when what you're doing is inconsistent with the fair notice that was given.
Yes.
So in other words, if today we looked at, the agenda item on 155.44, and then we somehow decided, oh, we're going to make a change to 155.42.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because the conversation naturally took us there.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta fit within the framework of what you've noticed, so the public has fair notice of what's being addressed.
Right.
So the fact that we struck it, and we didn't have it, never did ask that question, is, well, we didn't have that document.
This is
Yeah.
right here. The agenda
Mm-hmm.
is your controlling
Yes.
document. The fact that there may be additional information that is instructive of what you're doing, what you have to do is act consistent with the agenda where you've given fair notice. And if you
Right.
have not given sufficient notice, then the item is subject to being addressed.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the ordinances.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Deborah's question was, we didn't write or produce an ordinance as council where we struck the whole thing. Does it have to come back to us?
I don't think so, because the notice says, and Bud, you can jump in here, it talks about and take appropriate action on section 155.44.
So it was,
And it was, it basically said to remove the language allowed for lots smaller than 12,000 square feet.
Yes.
Yeah. And so basically, all the discussion was around that.
And whether it's striking a few words out of the title and the body or the whole thing, it's still covered in the agenda,
Mhm.
right? I mean, that's what you're saying.
so I'm going to pivot a little bit and go to when Woodcreek adjusts their codes so that the cities becomes in line with state code,
Mhm.
like instructions from state.
Sure.
Is that a merely administrative feature?
Yes, it
Mhm.
is,
It
because
is.
the city's already bound by state law.
So
To the
what
extent,
happens when it touches zoning?
Zoning has to always go through, if it's not in compliance with, okay, so zoning, we always have to adjust to state law. Okay,
I understand.
but zoning should always go through the hearing process.
So that's the question is, let's say my house is blue is our code. Texas says, no, you must say my house is sky blue. Well, council presents an ordinance that says my house is sky blue. And it happens to be that the house is under zoning. Can council just go at that one vote, boom, we aligned ourselves with the Texas code? Or does it now have to go to P&Z they have to make a recommendation, and yeah, we understand that it's going through Texas code, so we're aligning, and then they send it back to us. I'm just wondering, how efficient can we be?
I'm trying to envision when a scenario would.
Well, I think he's talking about about the 55% masonry.
That's an
Yeah,
It is.
yeah.
And the thing, and so that was, but the state code also addresses other areas about actually not only 55% masonry, but it also talks about if you want to decide your house in any type of material that is accepted in the 2015 or 2012 building codes, you can now.
It already applies though.
Right.
So, I mean, the fact is, if state law says A and code of ordinances say B, A controls, it always controls, and B is void as written. So.
But that's why I was asking, it's an administrative feature when we just go, okay, you know what? B doesn't apply anymore.
Correct.
So.
And basically.
Weird those when you go, okay, but we have to send it to zoning to have them look at it too. And I'm like, well, but B doesn't apply anymore.
No, I don't think it was, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that send it back to zoning in order for it to apply. It says send it back to zoning so as they're clearing up, or actually probably ordinance committee, as they're clearing up the language in a lot of these things where the state code is overridden and we have old language that it's just cleaned up all in one.
Well, but let's just.
But it's still not, it still can't be, we still can't.
Well, I understand we can't enforce it, but to go back to 55% masonry, that wasn't actually the example I was using. I was speaking more generally.
I know, but
the example we used. We brought it here, and we were prepared to just strike it. And the recommendation was, well, we need to move it over there.
Well, I think the thing is, what we look at for staff, because we're not going to all be here someday. And when you have the ordinances that go through every ordinance and you follow it, the path saying, okay, this was struck at this time, this was struck at the next time. And it gives the future people that are running the city, the history, because they can go back and say, okay, ordinance number 65N, which was one of the original zoning codes, was amended at this point. This is what they amended. And then you keep going through all the way through, and it gives you that history. And that it assists, staff, especially when we're trying to build what happened. And when you look at our our code right now, it references every ordinance that amends that code.
I think the simple answer is it may not always be practical, it may not always be logical, but it's the process set forth under the law. And so when you're amending those zoning ordinances, you just.
Now I'm got confused again, because we once just said that Woodcreek has A, Texas says
Yes.
B, A no longer applies. So when council says, okay, A no longer applies, let's put B, it's an administrative feature.
Hey, P and Z, here's this. Thank you very much. Let's set this issue up. Let's marshal it through the process. Let's come back. Let's amend it again. It's what the law says. That's it. It's not a great answer.
No,
but
I understand. I just wanted to be as efficient as we can, but also understand why there's certain steps in the process. Another question is, I understand that if city code is contrary to Texas code, city code is not enforceable, but what if we try to enforce city code not knowing what Texas code may say to us? What happens?
Then if the city tries to enforce something that is void, it can enforce it insofar as is not called on it. And if it's called on it, then it loses the right to enforce it.
So it actually is in existence, even though it's not enforceable because we enforced it.
Could be.
You can sue.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'll use an example of Brent again. I mean, if he's got a client and files a lawsuit on behalf of that client, and the other side misses something, or Brent missed something, or me, a decision could be made in a court of law that is inconsistent with, statute or case law if the issue is not raised, and that issue can then be waived, and parties are stuck with a binding ruling that's inconsistent with the law, and that can happen with the city too.
So, I was hoping that the city planner was going to be here. I had some questions about him, but maybe, well, I don't know who to ask.
You'll go ahead and ask him.
The question is basically, I would love further discussion about this concept of future land use in our ETJ, which was brought up wonderfully today. At the comprehensive plan, as well as it was brought up in planning and zoning.
I think we're going off the.
We're a little bit off the workshop.
Yeah.
Are we?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, because I thought these were.
Use of that resource, is
Mm-hmm.
something that was on the agenda. I mean, can we call the,
Well, it's because I was trying to, as council members, we're interested in understanding the use of our resources, and part of our resources is knowledge, is how I'm approaching it, because there are things that I'm specifically trying to work out and view our ordinances and see where we can help shape them, but I will let it go.
My best answer is Chris, come by the office.
Deborah?
Yeah, so along what I think Chris is getting at, but this is a question I had earlier, was when we talk about our billable people and council having access to them and letting Mayor Rasco know about it, I would really love if at some point we got a little bit more clarification about what exactly all of this costs. Meaning, if I ask AB for Brandon's email in an email, are we getting billed for that? If I ask, and the answer is essentially yes, but it would be nice if council would understand the cost breakdown. Meaning, if these people are charging us, $10 an hour, right? No matter what you do, and they just sit there and log the minutes, or if it's, are some of these services included in our general pricing? Because like Brandon's offering all kinds of help to us, and I'm having to say, well, we need to know what you're billing us for first.
Yes.
Because we need to save your hours for essential services.
Sure. And for that one resource that we have asked for a scope of work for every one of the projects they're working on. So then council will be able to see that and know this is, and they'll should accept it, say, or, not accept it, say, okay, we understand how much the billable hours are. And it should have a breakdown there. He's giving me a scope of work for 154 and 155 because it's got to be completely rewritten to meet state law. But the council will see that, and you'll be able to see, okay, they're going to bill us $150 an hour for this work and on an hourly basis. Their staff is going to cost this much. We are under a general agreement with them for just, if we just call them up and ask them something that's not on the scope of work or just to manage all these other projects. And we can get that to you too, but all that's billable. But they do give us a breakdown. And once we should get 3 scopes of work from Brandon.
Okay. Because like, for example, I emailed asking, hey, does this need to go through a public hearing for an item, for a future agenda item?
Mm-hmm.
And I emailed all 3 of y'all because I knew the process was to make sure you 2 were aware if I was involving Bud. And then, I got a quick email back from Bud. Is there any of these services?
He's billable.
Yeah. So, does he sit there and clock? I took 5 seconds to reply. Sounds good.
When did I send you that email?
I don't know. Yesterday.
Hold on.
You just reminded him that he has to charge you for it.
No, I was going to look and see.
If he billed us.
Well, we've got 2 new council members, and
No,
we're
I
also
did not
kind
bill
of
for
fleshing
it.
out some of the details here for everyone. So it would be nice to have kind of a concept of like, if you email Bud a very simple question, it's $100. If he writes an ordinance, it's $1,000. Just that sort of an idea of.
I did not bill for that email. I just looked at my,
But it was only 5 words for the answer, wasn't it?
it was 5 words, which is, I agree with our esteemed mayor and manager.
That's right.
But I mean, that's the exception in the rule. I mean, your time is what.
My time is what I charge. My hourly billing rate, for most of my clients, it varies between $275 and $350 an hour, depending on how long they've worked for me. The city of Woodcreek is set at $200 an hour. I bill in 1/10 of an hour increments, which means 6-minute increments. So 6 minutes of time is $20. So a simple 6-minute phone call would be $20 for the city. So,
But it goes back to the use of the resources, because both the mayor and I both answered it, and Bud didn't have to chime in if he didn't want to.
yeah.
See.
Okay, so my next question is, it would be really nice if we, so we've been submitting items to the agenda, right? And then we find out, oh, it should have had this, or it wasn't properly worded. It would be really nice if we could get a little bit of heads up before the agenda goes out and we're all sitting in front of everyone. And it's like, oh, you didn't follow the process correctly. So if there could be just, if you're noticing something's missing, or that there's a process that should be explicitly followed and it's not clear that we are aware of it, it would be nice to have more of that communication up front rather than finding out in front of everyone and feeling like
I kind of
a
apologize.
roadblock.
I kind of apologized for that a little while ago.
Well, I think
It's
the
not
main
just,
thing is,
you know.
pardon me, but I think the main thing is we don't read everybody's minds. So we get the agenda item, but if you just make the phone call or anything, because you and I had a good conversation, when I was on the road the other day, and just know so we can talk it out. And that's the main thing is, and also for the mayor, if we can just talk it out and know what your train of thought is, then we can direct you in the right way. But if it just shows up and it's like, okay, we don't know, and it comes in on Friday at noon, and then we're trying to clean it up by Monday and Tuesday. So it's a lot easier. Like I said, we can't read everybody's minds. And that's why a lot of the times what goes on the agenda is exactly what the council members requested. Because
that's what we said we were going to do.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there have been a couple of times when it's just like, oh, crud, we have to get this done. And that's not good. I mean, that's not what we're trying to do. I mean, we made a very conscious decision that agenda items can come from any council member, anytime, for any reason, and they will go on the agenda, or we will have a conversation about why we're putting it off or what needs to be changed, right? And so that's what we've been trying to do. So the agenda items that come in, we just sort of accepted at face value. And then we get down to the nitty gritty of actually putting the agenda, and it's like, oh man. And then, it's like, we may try to reach somebody and then don't immediately, but it's still got to go to press. So we just sort of, we have a couple of times kind of taken that risk that we're going to, do the wrong thing or put the wrong thing out there and somebody's going to get surprised. There's not any intention of doing that. I promise you. It's just my ineptitude, in getting this done as a beginning mayor.
I guess I should clarify, that wasn't a criticism, it was just like a reminder request of like, if there's more that we need to provide, a phone call in advance is very easy to do.
Right.
And fix. And so just kind of a reminder of that's a two-way communication.
Right. And we will try to do, and the other part of it too is that, hey, I submitted that agenda item and I actually had some questions about it. I want to go in, but that part of that is why we said go talk to Brenton before you ever hit the send button, or me. I mean, I'm certainly not.
Or to send it to me, and then so I can discuss it with you before you can put it on the.
Yeah, one of the things that may not be clear in that whole agenda process is that when you send in an agenda request using the form, I get an email in the other email folder, the one that you don't ever look at. I mean, it used to come into the main one, but now they come into the secondary one. And so I missed, well, Brenton doesn't get those at all. So unless I send Brenton, hey, he can go into the form and look at the individual request, but he didn't get pinged when one goes in. So And it'd be great if you did. And in fact, one of the things we're trying to figure out is how do we get this set up like in an internal account rather than mine. So that there's a little bit more control and sharing of that information. So again, it's something that just we're trying to tweak. But that's just one of those things. It's like, when we first started doing it, I'd get in my main inbox, agenda requests. I'd go in, I was kind of excited about it, so I'd go in and check it out. And so now I have to remember going to that other folder, and if I see one, and I have, seen them said, hey, take a look at this, that came in. So that is still a little bit of a glitch in the system. And, that's sort of going to what Councilmember Grummer was talking about with efficiency. That's kind of what we've been trying to do. I mean, to save staff resources, to be more efficient. Let's focus on the bigger, more strategic things, and let technology help us out where it can. Let's be more efficient all the way across the board. It also allows us to get things done a little faster with any luck at all. I think we got some criticism first because you got to try to take on so much, and part of it is just passion and energy, but also part of it was just it got to be a lot easier to get an agenda item in and posted. So we had these big and people saying, hey, take a breath, and it's like, hey, you know what, we didn't. And we knocked some stuff out. And I mean, I would venture to guess that no city council in the history of Woodcreek has been able to get as much done as we got done in the first 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all good stuff. I mean, it's all stuff we're proud of. So efficiency can be great, but also it's okay to take it easy a little bit too. So.
In terms of that process, so the council is aware, I do not look at agendas until they're final, because I think it is a poor use of my time to go through that. But if you do have a question about an agenda item, when it is final, then I think that would be the right time to reach out. But I'll never do it before.
Also, meaning we've sent it into the form?
In my opinion, is when the actual agenda is submitted for public consumption.
Mm-hmm.
Posted notice.
Yeah.
Right.
So after that point, we can ask you questions.
You can ask me what you want, whenever you want, however you want. All I'm saying is I don't of my own volition go and review anything until it's actually been posted.
But I also want to sort of segue a little bit into the next item on the in the agenda is confidentiality, because it's come to my attention. It's clear that confidentiality has been broken on more than one occasion, and I'm not naming names or pointing fingers, but things that have been discussed in executive session are all of a sudden on social media. That things that were posted as potential agenda items showed up on social media as this is going to be on the agenda. When it never made the agenda, still hadn't made the agenda. These were things that were just out there, but that information was shared, outside of this body, to whoever. And then out on social media, and that's just when we do the work here, it remains a confidential work in progress until it's posted, until we have a meeting, until it's open for discussion. And I don't care who you are, who we are, staff, council, mayor. You just can't do that. We just can't tolerate that. So. And it is against our anti-fraud policy, and it's just we just can't do that. And tied to that sort of is dissemination of information. And we all have a lot of information some of it confidential, some of it not. We talked about that a little bit earlier on about just who speaks for the council. You may get a call from a reporter or anybody else, and ask your opinion. If you are speaking to anyone outside, it's your opinion. You can do that, but really the only person authorized to speak, for the city is me or someone that I designate. Which could be Brenton. I mean,
I'm just saying it's the PIO. So.
Yeah. So I mean, but it's just be careful of that. This is it's clear. Just make it clear on the call that it's my opinion or this is my experience. Which is fine. But the one about attendance at elected bodies.
Okay. Well, I put that on there because
I know what it is.
You know what it is. That when you do attend these other meetings, that you are still representing yourself, not as a council member. And we have previously we've had at PNC where they felt like they were being influenced by a council member, even though they're there speaking on behalf of themselves. And so that's the only thing we got to caution. And it's just like the mayor talked about. If you attend a meeting with Wimberley, it's back to you are yourself unless specifically authorized by this council to represent the city on that
right
item. So, and that's just the thing. Yes, we just got to make sure everybody understands that this is a body, and that's it.
Yeah, I've always, I mean, as a council member and as mayor, I've attended, meetings, of the city that I was interested in as a citizen of Woodcreek. I want to know what y'all are talking about. But I do try to make it a point to keep my mouth shut and not unless I am asked to speak, which has happened, and I'll, hey, could you address that? So I can understand it being intimidating, if you're a P&Z or a Parks Board member, to, see a bunch of council members and mayor in the room. So if you just bear that in mind, just make sure that if, that you're just there as an observer, as an interested citizen. But I frankly encourage people to attend and to learn what's going on.
You don't check your First Amendment rights at the door.
That's right.
Any other questions or comments about that? So that's actually one long thing. Elected bodies, other boards and their commission. I hadn't really thought about going to the Blanco Council meeting or, Wimberley or something like that. So yeah, again, that's like I'm going as a private citizen unless asked to represent the city. And actually representing the city of Woodcreek has already been, I mean, we've addressed that pretty well.
Several times.
I mean, I just want to say, I am incredibly proud to serve with you all, to work with Maureen and Bud and Joe and Brenton and Deborah, Aurora, Brenton, Chris, Judy. It's like y'all are sort of family now, and we've had some really interesting and loving conversations, along with the other conversations that we've had that maybe not so loving, but very constructive and productive. I think that we're doing this right. I'm proud of what you accomplished. I say you because I don't get to vote.
Unless it's a tie.
Yeah, and don't ever put me in don't ever make a tie. No, it's a privilege. So thank you very much, and thanks for listening to all this and for participating and being a part of this. Wherever they are, our moms are all proud. Mine's looking down at me, and I guarantee you she's smiling. So, unless there's any other business, entertainment to do.
So moved.
Second.
All right. We stand in adjournment.
Yay.